Today, our speaker is Susan Farren. She will share her truly remarkable and inspirational story. Susan was a paramedic for 30 years who overcame many personal challenges. Dealing with her own issues led her to recognize the vulnerability of other first responders who often experience PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. In 2017, Susan founded a nonprofit organization, First Responders Resiliency, Incorporated. Her organization, whose trademark is putting PTSD out of business, has now helped over 13,000 first responders. Please welcome Susan Farren.
Now, let me make sure that's on. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, they told you this is the church service, right? The Sunday morning church service. Well, thank you for coming. This is the Church of Sue. And we're going to talk a little bit about our organization and the work that we do, how I found myself in this situation. Before you start getting all excited about, oh, I'm sitting in the front row, this is going to be amazing. I love the earring. That's amazing. And great hair. Sorry to make you the center of attention right now, but it's really working. Beautiful. Before you get excited about, oh, she's a professional speaker. Oh, she's done this. I'm a divorced housewife with 5 children from Roanoke Park, California. So drop your standards now, okay? Just drop your standards and I'm not going to disappoint you, okay? But I'm going to tell you about, really this is going to be the message that I'll be giving at any given time, which is no matter where you are in life, it doesn't matter. If you have a vision to do something, it can be done. I have a magnet on my refrigerator that says, it's not too late, you're not too old. Okay? So you remember that, because if you have a calling in your heart or a vision, and you can change the world by just talking to a single person. You can change their world. And I love this philosophy of multiplying the compound effect of helping people one person at a time. And so I'm going to talk to you like you're one person. I'm not going to do this huge presentation like, there's 100 people in the room. I'm going to speak to you individually from my heart. All right, this is just a little picture there of the organization, talks about the fact that we're a nonprofit. And you would really want to think that they'd have some really professional person coming up here to represent an organization. But I mentioned who I am and where I come from. I want you to know that this idea started in my dining room with butcher paper. Okay, so those Post-its, those little Post-its, they make them so they're like this big. And I had covered my family room wall in Post-it paper. And that's how I came up with the idea. So we'll talk a little bit about that. My background, as she introduced me, was that I was a paramedic. But I want to back up a little bit further than that. I grew up in the town of Sonoma. My parents were lovely, well-educated people who were both alcoholics. Now, that may not seem relevant to the story, but I assure you it is. My father was a functioning alcoholic. You wouldn't have known by looking at our family. You couldn't have picked that up until the doors were closed and we were home and we saw what was going on. My mom was this beautiful, elegant, well-educated woman who was the president of our nursing program at university. And she was this beautiful gal that I would see as a little girl going to work and coming back in her beautiful uniform. And she was so amazing. Like I always looked up to her for what she did. But nobody would know that my mom, who went to work and was everything to everyone and came home and immediately started drinking, and I would watch her even as a little girl, I knew that once she'd had 2 of those vodka orange juice drinks, she was about to go to sleep. So I really found myself talking very quickly to get her attention, to get my 20 minutes of information and connection to my mom. And I remember most of my life, my parents saying, Susie, stop talking. Susie, stop talking. Guess what I get paid to do? So what I didn't know about my mom is that she was both an alcoholic and a prescription drug addict. And you can't know that as a child. You can't know that as a child. You only know what you're experiencing. Because my mom was also an ER, and ICU nurse. And if we think that that problem isn't going on today, you're mistaken, because the work of serving other people takes a toll. And one of the things that I did not know when I first started doing this work was that the first 7 years of a person's life, they're storing information in this theta brain state. I'll talk about this a little bit later. This theta brain state where the brain is absorbing information. Do I have any neurologists in the room? I'm afraid there's a neurologist in the room. Okay, because I hope that I'm going to sound smart. And this theta brain state is when the brain is absorbing information and it's dictating important information for you to have for the rest of your life. So interestingly enough, a lot of children who grow up in homes where there's addiction and chaos grow up to be first responders. Why? Because they learn early on, I'm not the priority, pay attention to the environment, there's a crisis and you're going to have to serve. They don't know that, they're just children. And then from 8 to 12, the brain moves into an alpha state, which is a little bit faster. And then from 13 on up, average, you're in a beta state. And that's what you're all in right now, where we're awake and alert and paying attention to what's going on. My mom, secondary to her disease, would die when I was 17. So I'm a senior in high school. We now moved to Healdsburg. 6 months before my mom dies, my high school boyfriend's killed in a car crash. And then my mom dies, succumbs to her alcoholism. I end up at the junior college taking criminal law classes because I figured my ability to communicate, I might want to be a lawyer. That was my mother's idea, actually. And as an elective course, one of the JC counselors encouraged me to take a first aid class. And that led to EMT school. And I got on the ambulances and I was like, oh, I'm home. Now, I didn't know that. My head didn't say that, but I recognized that it felt familiar. And that word familiar comes from family. And so I would spend 2.5 years working here in Santa Rosa on the ambulances. I ran one shooting in all my time here for a guy who stuck a 22 caliber weapon, small caliber, into his pants in a bar and shot himself in the thigh. That was my whole experience. When I was 21 years old, I went down to one of Stanford's last programs and I went to paramedic school. And 2 months before my 22nd birthday, I was working as a paramedic in West Oakland during the inception of crack cocaine. In the first 24 hours I was on duty, I ran 3 fatal shootings. I would spend 5 years in West Oakland. I thought I'd keep a journal of the experience, but decided that that probably wasn't a good idea based on what I was seeing. And we ran an average of 72 hours a week I worked. And we ran an average of 16 to 21 calls every 24 hours for 72 hours a week. And I would stay there for 5 years. After I'd been there about 2.5 years, they promoted me to a paramedic supervisor. So now I'm in a pickup truck and I'm driving to all the traumatic calls and not just my calls. Now, I don't know what's happening to me. I think that I'm just getting what we called back then burnout. That's what we called it. The veterans had post-traumatic stress. The first responders had burnout. I don't want you to think that we were so antiquated that we didn't have a behavioral wellness program. We did. It was called Suck It Up, Buttercup. And that's the way we did it, right? We just sucked it up. Gave me an extra slide. All right. So I do this career my whole life. From the time I am 18 years old, I'm on the ambulance. I end up being an educator and a consultant. I work for the fire departments and the private sector. I have this reputation of being firm, fair, and funny. I'm firm about good medicine. I don't think anybody goes to work, not the police officers, not the firefighters, not the paramedics, not the emergency room physicians, not the nurses, and think to themselves, I'm going to go to work today and do something wrong and get myself on the news and destroy the reputation of our industry. I don't think anyone gets to work and thinks that. I'm fair about good medicine. The reality is we're all doing the best we can. Most of us, right? Sometimes we compromise. We know we're compromising. But most people who go to their jobs go to their job with the intention of doing that job well. A sense of purpose, a sense of value. And I'm funny. I grew up in an alcoholic household. There's some humor in that, hard to believe. There was some funny stories. I grew up in an industry where I worked primarily with men. And if you don't have a sense of humor working with men in West Oakland, you are not going to survive. But after being in Oakland for 5 years, I recognize I'm burned out. I don't know that that's what it is. I say my give a crap is broken. And so I do what a lot of people do when they're under a lot of stress is I look for change. The brain does that without asking you. The brain starts telling you what to do. And so the brain tells me, we got to change situations. Here's the problem. You're in West Oakland with all this murder, and we got to get out of here. So I do what any intelligent and articulate person does. I go 12 miles to San Francisco and tell myself all my problems will be different now. I've changed my uniform and my pay rate, but I have not changed the environment. I realize the toll that this is taking on me because I will sometimes throw up after difficult calls. But I will do like a lot of first responders. I will go and get myself cleaned up and splash some cold water on my face and go out and do it again. Nobody asks us when we show up, nor should you. When we arrive at your home for a cardiac event or shortness of breath, or you're having a baby, how's your shift been? Right? Tell me about your last call. How was your day? People often ask me things like, how did you become a paramedic? Now, nobody wants to hear me say, oh, well, both of my parents were alcoholics, dear. It prepared me perfectly for this industry. I met and married my husband, who was also a paramedic firefighter. We had 5 children. We moved out of the East Bay, and we raised our babies in Rohnert Park, California. 4 little boys and a girl. In 2015, we were preparing to retire. We had both been on the job almost 30 years, and we were going to, our children, 2 were getting into college. 1 was going to Berkeley, 1 was going to UCLA. Yeah, I got to say that. I had 2 in high school and 1 coming into high school. They were homeschooled kids because my husband and I saw what was happening in society and thought, surely we can invest enough into our children that they would have a love for learning. It wasn't that I was smarter than the teachers. I wanted to give my kids a love for learning. So we were able to do that between our shifts, doing our work. And so we are going to, we have a 5th wheel. We're going to retire, and we're going to travel across the US and spend our children's inheritance. And that's the plan. And then I find out that my husband has a life that has not involved me. And all of a sudden, I find myself in the middle of a divorce. And that is unexpected. 23 years of marriage and 5 children. I have a plan. Anybody here have a plan for your life and it didn't turn out quite the way you thought it was going to happen? Yeah, apparently, I heard this joke, right? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans for the day. Start with telling him your plans for the day. Try telling him plans for your life. Okay, and I'm not preaching at you, although this is Sunday, and I could do that. But I recognize that my life was taking a twist I didn't expect. And so all of a sudden, I realize all my medical benefits are coming from the fire department. And I'm about to go through a divorce, so I'm going to have to go back and get a full-time job. I've been a contractor for the last 15 years. I work part-time for Sonoma Fire and Marin Fire and Novato Fire. And so I have this educational consulting work that I do. And so I get paid, but I don't get benefits, and it's not really full-time work. And so I realize I'm going to have to go get a full-time job again. I end up going back to Oakland because it's the only place that's looking for somebody with my skill set. And hard to believe, if you can't work on an ambulance or don't want to work on an ambulance, the job market is not huge for clinical coordinators for this industry. And so I end up back in Oakland. And I end up in Oakland at the end of 2015. While I'm going through this divorce, I'm down in Oakland 5 months working for the county. And this is what I think, oh, thank goodness. At least I've landed. I have a job. I have benefits. We're going to be okay. It's the first time I've had to work full-time out of the house and don't have my kids with me, which is a hard thing for a mom. It's a hard thing for a mom, but it's, we have to do what we have to do. We got to raise our families. We got to put food on the table. And so I get myself into the situation where I manage this really nice job down at Alameda County. I'm really happy about it. And after I'd been down in Alameda County 5 months, 2 weeks before my divorce is final, I start urinating blood. I go to Kaiser, and they take a quick look at me and tell me that I have a tumor in my right kidney. The doctor says, we're going to go ahead and have an oncologist call you, Jane. And that oncologist calls me and says, don't worry, I see these all the time. Trust me, if you find out you have a tumor in your kidney, the next thing you want is a phone call that says, don't worry, we see these all the time. He said, I'll take this out laparoscopically. We'll have you back to work in 2 weeks. I can do that. I can do that. But there is this kind of a thought for me. It's like, how did this happen? Like, I ate organic before it was cool. I was a triathlete. I didn't succumb to any of the things my mom was doing. I actually made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to live my life like that. I wasn't going to do that to my kids. But at least we're going to take this out laparoscopically and have it over with in a couple of weeks. And I can do that. And the doctor says, the oncologist says, I'd like you to come in for a pre-op appointment in person. Let's do this quickly. This is at such a size, I don't want to wait. I said, okay. So I walked into the surgeon's office the next day. And when he walked in the room, a second surgeon followed him in. I don't know who you are, but I like you. You make a lot of humming sounds. It makes me think you know what I'm talking about. Of course you are. There's a doctor in the front row. That's what I needed. You could have left that pressure to the end of the presentation.
No, sweetie.
No, sweetie, I love you. Oh, yeah.
It's a whistle.
Yeah. Oh, go girl. All right. So, we'll talk. So I end up having the second surgeon walk in the room and I'm like, uh-oh, this can't be good news. Like I have hair standing up on the back of my neck. And the surgeon says, I need you to sit down for a minute. And I'm like, oh shit, sorry. She swore first. I didn't start this. And he said, hey, I gotta talk to you about something. Can you come over here? I want you to see the computer screen. I have no idea what happened after that. This is what I remember. He said, last night when I talked to you, I had gone through your scan, your initial scan, and I'd found it in your kidney. But I went through the rest of your belly last night before this meeting, and I found it in your liver as well. So this is not just an isolated kidney tumor. It's probably not started in either your kidney or your liver. It probably started in your colon or your chest. And so we're not going to take this out laparoscopically. We're going to take you down to San Francisco. We're going to resect your liver. We're going to take out your kidney, and we'll start you on palliative care. Now, I know what palliative care means. That means I'm not going to live long. And I asked this question, how long do I have? And he said, you have about a year. And the next sound I hear is this howling sound. And I'm thinking, what is that sound? And then I realize it's me. I have my head between my knees and I'm screaming. I'm screaming. And what's running through my mind is, how did this happen? How did this happen? Because deep down inside, all humans want life to be fair. And it doesn't seem fair right now. I've done all this work. I've taken care of myself. I've served other people. How can I spend my whole life saving other people and now I'm going to die? It just seems unfair. They spend the next few days sending me in for tests and scans. They're putting tubes inside of me and dyes inside of me and scanning all of these parts of my body. And I'm talking to anybody who will listen to me. The woman who says to me as I'm walking in for my MRI, great hair. I said, thank you. Do you believe in God? Would you be willing to pray for me? I've been given a 1-year diagnosis and I want to, when the young man, God bless you, comes in and says he's going to do this scan on me, I say, is there a chance you believe in God? Because this is what I believe. There are no atheists in foxholes. Man, if you're looking for a rope, this is the time to start looking. And I'm looking. Maybe it's not for you, but it was for me. And the interesting thing was, I never tell this part of the story, but I'm just going to share it with you. When I went in for my MRI, I asked the MRI tech, do you believe in God? And he said, oh, yes. Funny thing is, the nurse and I both go to church together. And I said, would you pray for me? And he said, yeah, we'll do that as soon as I get back into the booth. And they covered me with a blanket and sent me into the tube. The surgeon calls me 2 days later, and he says, I have no idea how to tell you this. It turns out you don't have a tumor in your liver. It's a birthmark. It's a hemangioma. So if you see somebody with like a port wine stain on their skin, I have one of those in my liver. So it looks like a mass in a scan, and it's not. And I'm like, that's what I call a stay of execution, baby. That's what I call that. And so he says, listen, I'm not going to take you to San Francisco. We're not going to do this surgery on you, but we're not doing this laparoscopically. I want to take you into Kaiser Santa Rosa. I want to open you up. I want to find out what else is going on, just in case. Now, I don't know that he has a suspicion that there's more hiding in me, but he doesn't tell me that. But he does decide to go ahead and open me up, and he opens me up under my right rib cage. He takes out a portion of my kidney and that tumor. He checks the rest of my belly to make sure there's no hidden cancer. He's just, he's being careful. But inadvertently, he cuts a nerve bundle and paralyzes my abdominal muscle. So now the right side of my belly is paralyzed and I can't sit for extended periods of time. So I can't sit on an airplane for long flights. I can't sit in a car for long distances. I can't sit in the same position, and I can't sit in an ambulance to be a paramedic. I can't drive to San Leandro where my new job is. I try 6 weeks after. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, doctor, is to release somebody back to work after 6 weeks after major surgery. It should be 6 months. But regardless, they send me back to work, and I get as far as Novato from Rohnert Park, and I start to have a spasm in my belly. I think, I'm not pregnant. I know I'm not pregnant, and this feels like I'm having a baby. So I pull over and I walk on the freeway, and I get to a Starbucks and I stretch, and I can't figure out, I've never had a surgery before. I don't even know what's going on. And so for several weeks, I try to drive back down to Oakland, and I can't. Every time I get to work, I got to lay on the floor and cry. I don't know what's happened. What's happened is they've paralyzed this nerve bundle, either strained it or cut it. We're not sure. It's paralyzed this right side of my belly. The left side is overcompensating. The muscle in my leg is overcompensating. So when I sit for too long, this part is paralyzed, this part overcompensates, and it spasms. Woohoo! So I didn't know. And I know that some people think, oh, it's terrible. But the truth is, I'm alive, right? It's a side effect of my surgery. But here we are in front of the Oakmont Symposium having fun. And what happens in that story is, that's a compelling story, right? It's a compelling story. It's enough to keep you awake. It's enough to keep you here on a Sunday morning. And the reality is, it's a good story. But that's not what the story's about. The story's not about what happened to me. The story is what happened 3 days after my operation when one of the surgeons came in my room and he made that comment. We see a lot of this in first responders. I said, you see a lot of what? And he said, organ cancer. Darling, I've been doing this since I was 18 years old. Nobody's ever talked to me, or my husband is a firefighter, or our friends as police officers, or emergency room physician friends about organ cancer and first responders. There's always conversation about things like carcinogens. It's in our turnouts. It's in the airbags. It's in the plastics. So we're going to get exposure through that. But nobody's talked about organ cancer and first responders in a way that I could understand what they were talking about. Oh, I know. I got to point it at this thing. All right. So the first thing that happened 7 days after my operation, they released me from the hospital, and I go home, and the first thing I do is I enter organ cancer first responders into the search bar of my computer. I did not do this for the other first responders. I did this for me. I'm just telling you the truth. I wanted to know, what did they know about organ cancer and first responders that I could know that could potentially protect me in the future? And I find this article. And 4 months after my surgery, this is on the front of a magazine saying, PTSD and cancer, growing number of firefighters and paramedics at risk. Absolutely untrue. All of us are at risk. Not a growing number. All of us are at risk, but nobody's discussing it. So I find this medical article when I do that research, and then there's a link in this article to something else. And all of a sudden, every single day, I'm getting out of bed, I'm going to my computer, and I'm searching something else. Why are we depressed? Why do we isolate? Why do we drink too much? Why do we do these things? And I can find something. I can find something. I can find something. Why do we divorce? Why? I'm watching. Now, I don't know this statistically. I'm telling you what I lived. This is a lived experience. I watch my partners come in. They're married 3 years. They get divorced. I watch my partners come in. They're sober. And 5 years, 10 years later, they're coming into work, and I can smell the booze on their breath. These funny, friendly people who I'm working with every day are now isolating and drinking and depressed and alienated and angry and suicidal. What is happening? And every day I just get up and I read another article. And I do this every day for just over a year. And I realize, holy crap, none of us know this. I know because I teach it. I go out and I talk to fire departments and private sector people, and I talk to first responders, and I've been educating first responders for years and years, and I have no idea. And nobody has any idea. I know we don't have any idea. Now, I will tell you that within 18 months of me diagnosed with kidney cancer, 2 of my partners had died of pancreatic cancer. 6 months ago, my best friend and partner from Oakland, Francine, died of Lou Gehrig's disease. 10 years after my friend Mike Ortelli died of Lou Gehrig's disease. And 3 months afterwards, my friend John Burgess is diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. He's a Sac Metro City firefighter. Mike was a Marin County firefighter. And I'm like, I don't think this is normal. Now, I know I got me a minute on the planet. I know that you're not all adults, senior citizens here, but I am old enough to live in Oakmont. I know you don't know that by looking at me, but I am old enough to live here. And I recognize when you've been on the planet a while, you're going to know people who have succumbed to illness or injury. That's going to happen. That's part of this human journey. Everyone here has suffered. Everyone here has suffered. But nobody said anything about our career killing us. I had never heard anything about the impacts of the work that we did. And just 5 of us as primary instructors within this organization, 5 of us have 56 colleagues who have killed themselves. That is not something you see working in a flower store. And that is not something you see in a bank. That is something that we keep these dirty little secrets of how sick we become. We don't tell anyone. You see us, and I'm not suggesting you be afraid of the first responders. Please don't be afraid of the first responders. But I am telling you that not all of them, but many of them are really struggling with what they're seeing. Because you think about the veterans, and God bless you. I know that there are veterans in here. My father was in the Air Force. My uncle's a Marine. I understand the veterans. I have a huge respect for them. And yet, most veterans will not spend time in war, and they will get post-traumatic stress. But most first responders who choose to do it when they go into it have to go through an 18-month probation. You can't just go in because you want to. There's a long process you have to get through, and they will do it for 20 to 30 years. And every first responder, bar none, is going to begin to have the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. They may not exhibit them, but they will have them. And here's the phrase I use. You can't read the label from inside the jar. You don't know what's happening to you until you get sick or depressed or addicted or divorced for the 2nd or 3rd time, or you get busted for a DUI. Most people don't know what's happening. So what happens is I take this information and I start going door to door to departments that I worked for. I started in Santa Rosa, and then I went to Sonoma, and I said, would you guys give me just an hour? I think I can tell everybody what's happening to them, and we can get ahead of this. We don't have to wait until they get sick. And the chief of Sonoma Fire let me come in. He let me come in. He gave me 1 hour. And he said, go ahead, tell them your story. So I got up and I said, here's all the research that I've done, and here's what I've discovered. And one of the firefighters in the back of the room says, holy cow, what are you going to do with that information? And I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my kids and I'm going to sell our house and I'm going to get the seed money to start a nonprofit to train other first responders how to stay alive. That sounds like a really dumb idea for a woman who has just had major surgery, is recently divorced, has had a terminal diagnosis, and has discovered a bunch of information on her computer. That sounds like a really dumb idea. So I did it. And I went home, I talked to my children, and I said, I think I can do something about this. Now, let me just give you a quick rundown. I won't bore you with the details, but what we had in 1980, PTSD was classified as something that was affecting veterans, and it was added to the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Therapists. In 1983, we came up with something called CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management, where we would talk together. And we thought, if we talk to each other, we'll feel better. The problem is no one recognizes mirror neurons. So when I talk to you about my pain, your brain will remember pain you had just like it to try to relate to me. It's a neurological impact. Nobody knew it. In the mid-2000s, we came up with something called peer counseling. So peer counseling means I'm not going to talk to a therapist who has no bloody idea what I do for a living. I'm going to talk to another first responder so that they can relate to me, and we'll have this training. We'll give you a couple of days of training and you'll be a peer. Mirror neurons. No one knew what was happening to us. I'm not suggesting that those things aren't wonderful and we shouldn't have culturally competent therapists. I'm not suggesting any of that. I'm suggesting that there is something we could do in advance of them getting sick. That's what I was suggesting. And I decided to start a nonprofit to try to help my colleagues and me stay alive. I realized we do spend billions of dollars on apparatus, equipment, law enforcement techniques. We give them all this stuff to protect their bodies and to protect the structures and bodies of the clients that we serve, but we spend nothing on the most important piece of equipment any first responder will ever have, and that's their brain and spinal cord, their nervous system. What is happening to the nervous system? I can get your body to walk in and run a full arrest or extricate a child from a car crash. I can train you how to put a fire out, chase a felon down the freeway. But what do I do with you after that? What do I wait till you're broken and send you to a therapist or medicate you or send you home with a bottle of whiskey and a handgun? That's what's happening. What are we going to do about it? And this is the phrase that I run into. We've always done it this way. I was speaking at a Chiefs event in Sonoma recently, and one of the Chiefs asked, what do you think is the number one thing that gets in the way of people providing your service? And I said, oh, that's easy. Tradition. Because that's the way we've always done it. And we got our wounds and our skeletons, and ain't nobody seeing behind that curtain. Yeah, except for the other first responders. And I can't sit down, and you can't shut me up. So off we go, ladies and gentlemen, off we go. So I've done the research. This is what I know to be true. And I want you to know, if you're sitting here and you're thinking about the fact that you know a first responder, or you are a first responder, or you were a veteran, and you're saying to yourself, gosh, this really relates to me. I'll bet you everybody in this room is thinking to themselves at some point, this relates to me too. Yeah, you know why? It's a human condition. I just happen to be a female first responder, so I talk to first responders and I call them on their BS. Oh, yes, I know you've got it all figured out. I understand that half a bottle of whiskey at night while you're sitting on the back deck hating your life is a coping mechanism that we all utilize, and it's killing you, and you deserve to be happy. You deserve to sleep through the night. You deserve not to have traumatic memories. You deserve to have a relationship with your family. You deserve all that, and they don't know that because no one tells them that, because they've been serving other people their whole lives, beginning in the first 7 years, in most cases, of their lives. Not all of them, but many. So here's what I found out. Oh, wait, there's a cool button here. Check this out. Oh, does it work? Let me see. Oh, watch this cool button. Oh, it's kind of slow. Da, 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 da. No, it's not that really good, but here it is, neurological. The neuroanatomy changes when you're repeatedly exposed to trauma and stress. The structure and shape of the brain change. The amygdala is enlarged, the hippocampus and hypothalamus, the ability to mitigate trauma or to calm you down are actually diminished. And so the human brain changes. When the human brain changes, it changes us psychologically. We begin to see the world differently. When you're a police officer and you're on the SWAT team of the domestic violence or the child sexual assault unit, you start to think everybody's a bad guy. Let me tell you why. Nobody calls 911 and says, you just look fantastic. Thanks for coming today. How are you? Nobody calls 911 and says that. They call 911 because they're facing a crisis and they don't know what to do. And so we all show up with our equipment and our ideas and our uniforms, and we come in to try to save the day, right? Feels fabulous. Psychologically, we're altered. We begin to see the world through a different lens. We don't know what's happening, can't read the label from inside the jar. Guess what happens when we're changed psychologically? We become more angry and detached, isolated, or we start utilizing substances to calm ourselves down. We change relationally. Guess what? Our loved ones see the change in us long before we know what's going on, and oftentimes that leads to divorce or broken relationships with your children or whoever, but you don't know what's happening. That affects you, or say, I'm sorry, the word, I missed the word because what are those called? The words up there? Captions, thank you. The closed caption is hiding the picture of the word emotional. We change emotionally. The word emotion means energy in motion. Guess what we don't do? We don't emote. Do you really want me to show up at your house on a call crying? It's been a really hard day. There's blood everywhere. No, you don't want me doing that. So I use this phrase, smoking or non-smoking, which means this. When I was a little girl, we would go to restaurants in Sonoma and they would ask my parents smoking or non-smoking. And my parents would say non-smoking. And they'd walk us right through the smoking section to take us to the non-smoking section, which was 10 tables of people who weren't smoking. There was no filtration system. There was nobody with palm fronds blowing all the smoke out of the room. We were just in a room that people weren't smoking. If that sounds stupid, we used to smoke on airplanes too. Okay, we had a non-smoking section in the airplane. Okay, people, this is a test. You're in a cylindrical tube of metal, 30,000 feet above the sky. Your grandmother is in row 4, smoking a cigar. She turns on the vent to keep the cigar smoke from entering her blue hair. 10 rows back is you opening your vent to get fresh air. Who's smoking on the airplane, people? This is a test. Everybody is smoking on the airplane. So we stopped doing that, and we stopped telling people that we used to do it. Okay? Smoking or non-smoking. First responders are in this smoking environment the whole time they're at work. They tell themselves, I'm going to leave my work at work, and I won't talk about it with my families, and they won't know and worry about me. And that's absolute nonsense. The human nervous system doesn't know the difference. I'm at Safeway in the produce section, and I hear somebody gasp and drop to the ground, and I am a first responder right then, right there. I was at a baseball game with my son when he was 10 years old in Rohnert Park, and a little boy got hit in the chest with a baseball. I saw him start running for first base, and then he dropped, and he stopped breathing, and his heart stopped beating because he'd been impacted at this R on T phenomenon where the heart is resetting from the electrical impulse, and it shut off his heart, put him into ventricular fibrillation. I happen to know about commotio cordis, which is this disorder that is very rare. It happened to an NFL football player recently. You may have seen him. They did CPR on him on the field. He survived. I did CPR on a little boy at a baseball game. And thank God my husband was there as well, and he survived. But had we not been there, who knows if people would have even recognized what to do. The point I'm trying to make isn't that I'm a hero because I did CPR off duty. It's because there is no off duty. We're always on the job. Nurses, doctors, police officers. Physiologically, we store that information in our tissues. It's not just stored in the human brain. Trauma is stored throughout human tissue. We know there's through Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's work, the body keeps the score, Peter Levine's work in somatic care of veterans. If what we were doing was working in the last 30 years, the statistics around how we're getting sick and dying would be going down, not up, and they aren't. And I recognized that because my partners were still dying. And I realized we're waiting until after people are sick to help them. And what we need is something proactive, not reactive. I'm not suggesting this is a cure to everything. I'm telling you, boy, if we can give people information, they're better off. And the bottom line is first responders act like, well, who are you to tell all this? You're just some girl from Rohnert Park, California. And I go, yeah, I know, but science doesn't care what you believe. You can have any degree you want in this room, but I have done the research, and I can tell you, we know for a fact. I'm now working with the director of brain research out of UCLA. We have an institutional review board study going on through Loma Linda University doing a longitudinal study on us, and we're working with a neuroscientist by Dr. Ryan Darcy out of Canada, who's researching the changes that we're able to make by training first responders how to protect their nervous systems, how to mitigate the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Okay, let's not get lost here. Let's go back to the beginning of my presentation. I'm a retired paramedic who was a housewife in Rohnert Park, California with 5 children who now works with universities and neuroscientists. And you know what they say? If you want to seem smart, have smart friends, and that's what I'm doing. Neurologically, physiologically, psychologically, we're being altered by our work. If we can train first responders how to recognize what's happening to them, how to utilize techniques to calm their nervous systems, we can help them mitigate the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I had this in butcher paper all over our family room wall, covering my children's baby photos. They were not impressed by that, by the way. But I did tell the kids, I said, I think I can help. I can help people like Daddy, and I can help me, and I can help our friends. But I need the money to be able to go to an attorney's office because I don't know what I'm doing, start a nonprofit, and we could go and get the first responders to come to a class. So that's what we did. In June of 2018, I hosted my first class with 40 first responders. By the way, I sold my house 3 weeks before the Tubbs fire. Oh my gosh. If you believe in something bigger than you in the universe, it seems like there was a plan. I'm just guessing. It was proactive. So I sold my house 3 weeks before the Tubbs fire. Obviously, the fires hit. I was working as a triage person over at the Vets Hall here, triaging supplies to people who'd lost their homes and all the things that they needed. And then by the time January came around, I felt like I had my feet back underneath me. And in January of 2018, I walked into a lawyer's office. I asked to start a nonprofit. I picked the name at the time, First Responders Resiliency. I had never used the word resiliency in a sentence, and I did not know it was going to become, Santa Rosa was going to become a resilient city. I had no idea. And we were hustling. I got 40 people into that room in June of 2018, 40 first responders who I encouraged to come to our conference, and they attended. And one first responder told another first responder, told another first responder. Maybe you're old enough to remember the old Flex hair commercial. I'll tell two friends and they'll tell two friends and so on and so on. That's kind of what I hoped would happen. And that's what happened. And by June of 2025, we had trained 13,000 first responders and their family members on how to avoid the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. We had just signed our second multi-year contract with CAL FIRE, and last year we signed a contract with the federal government, and I went to Washington, D.C. and trained the Capitol Police and the U.S. Marshals Violent Fugitive Apprehension Task Force team. Okay, so I'm a housewife from Rohnert Park, California, with 5 kids with an idea, and this Saturday, we're going to San Francisco, and the entire team, we're all career first responders, are receiving a humanitarian award at the NFL Super Bowl party with Lee Steinberg. And I don't say that to make you think I think I'm important. I don't. I'm a quarterback, which means that I'm nothing without a team. And we're all career first responders training other first responders. We're not professional speakers, although we've become professional speakers. We're subject matter experts on our own industry. I mentioned that we work with UCLA and Loma Linda University. 4 years ago, I went down and looked at a piece of property in Cotati, California, because at the end of the day, my dream was not to run around the United States training first responders. My dream was to build a center for first responders. There's all these places for veterans, and God bless them. But there's nothing for first responders. There's drug and alcohol abuse centers, and there's no resiliency center, so that when you are on the back deck of your house with a bottle of whiskey and a handgun, thinking that you should make a permanent decision for a non-permanent problem, there's a place you can call that's filled with first responders. And I went down and I looked at this property. I just want you to know, I had $1,500 in the bank, and I went and looked at 18 acres of $2 million that had a warehouse and a house on it and a parking lot. It used to be a 9-hole golf course on West Sierra Avenue. I looked at it and I said to the real estate agent, oh my gosh, this is perfect. If I had $2 million, I'd write you a check today. She goes, what are you going to do with this property? I said, oh, I'm going to build a resiliency center for first responders. And she goes, what's a resiliency center? I said, I don't know, but I know I'm going to build one, and they're going to have a place to go to get help. And she started to cry. She said, my father died of alcoholism. He was a sheriff's officer. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, one day I'm going to have a center. They have a place to go. 3 weeks later, that real estate agent called me, and she said, would you be willing to speak to the owner of that property? And I said, oh yeah, when? And she goes, well, she's on hold on the other line. Do you mind? And I'm like, no, go right ahead. This is crazy. And the owner gets on the phone and she goes, Sue, my name is Heidi. I own that property you saw on West Sierra Avenue in Cotati. She doesn't have a Southern accent, but it's so much cuter when I do it like this. And she said, I just want you to know I have 5 offers on that property, 2 of them over asking cash offers. And I thought, rich people are so weird. Like, why do you need to tell me this? And I just said, oh, congratulations. And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm physically sick about this. I don't think it's morally or spiritually right for me to sell this land to anyone but you. So I'm going to donate $100,000 to your organization so you can cover the closing costs. I'm going to loan you $500,000 to put down on that land, and I'm going to co-sign a loan for you to get that $1.4 million loan so you can buy that property. I have $1,500 in the bank and no credit from my divorce, and I am now the proud owner of a $1.4 million mortgage. And we have 18 acres. in Cotati, California, that used to be a 9-hole golf course. And I have been hustling for 4 years to cover that mortgage. If you want to know how much it is, see me after the presentation. And I've spent $990,000 paying for venues so that I can get the word out about the first responders and how they can get well. But we need to build that center in Cotati. It'll be the first responder resiliency center in the world. And then I'm building 40 more so that no first responder ends up at the back deck of their house with a bottle of whiskey and a handgun thinking that's a solution to a problem. We're going to let them know we're out here. We know what's happening. We're going to show you how to reverse the symptoms of post-traumatic stress. I'm not suggesting I'm a cure, but damn, I'm a good option. Oh, anybody here old enough to remember the band Def Leppard? All right, what's your name? Philip. You remember the drummer? He lost his arm when he was 21 years old. He lost his arm in a car crash when he was 21. He's the only one-armed drummer in the world who still plays for a rock and roll band. He found out about our organization. He called me last January. He said, my life was saved because an off-duty nurse and an off-duty police officer, completely separate from each other, going to New Year's Eve parties, drove across the accident and saved my life. That couple ended up getting married. So they didn't even know each other at the scene of the accident, and they ended up getting married. Roger and Eileen. They partnered with us last year. I now work with the drummer of Def Leppard. Come on. And we do drum circles, which help with heart coherence, not woo-woo, hippy-dippy, but heart coherence at the Bishop's Ranch in Healdsburg, where we host all of our conferences. Come on. I get VIP passes to Def Leppard concerts? Come on. This is what the neuroscientist in Canada designed, this thing called the NeuroCatch. What we do is we evaluate the brains of the first responders on the first day of our conference. It's a 3.5-day conference. And we show them what parts of the brain are not firing as quickly as they could. We put them through 3.5 days of nervous system training, and we reset their brains and show them the results. And we can show now, objectively and clinically, that the work we do brings improvements to the human brain of people who do this work. And if you stay with the work, the brain stays permanently altered. Come on, right? It's not just a conversation. It's a swim cap. We are now commissioned to certified as POST, which means Police Officer Standards of Training. So now we're certified to train the police officers. I mentioned Loma Linda University and UCLA. Oh, we just signed our first contract 2 years ago with one of the workers' comp organizations who are helping pay for first responders who are affiliated with our workers' comp program to attend our conferences. 10 minutes, that's my girl back there. She's not yawning and raising her arms. And that's my vision. I drew this on a napkin. That is the Resiliency Center right there. So currently this is an empty field, but that's going to be a 20,000 square foot building that's going to allow first responders to come in and get the help that they need. And we're also going to have horses on the left of the screen there and little casitas for them to stay in when we do training. So it's a day use facility. Anytime a first responder wants to come in and experience what we do, we'll give them the tools and techniques. We will also have culturally competent therapists. We'll have cancer research and support. We'll have support systems for the families, but they can also come in and do all the techniques that we teach on behavioral wellness. It's a sanctuary for first responders and their families, the only one in the world in Cotati. Currently, it's an empty field. I've spent $220,000. God, I don't know how I'm making all this money. I'm gonna tell you, if you don't believe in something, there's something crazy about a woman in Rohnert Park being able to raise enough money to pay for a venue and pay all these engineers. And we are in the second round of the county permits. And if those get approved, I'm going to figure out a way to fund this, and we're going to break ground for the first responder resiliency center in the world. That's just my opinion. Right? This is our team. Thank you. I love you guys. I appreciate you clapping. This is some of the first responders. We train them in art therapy. We do massage, we do playtime. It's the first time some of them have laughed so hard being sober since the 8th grade. Oh yeah, we teach them slow movement martial arts like Tai Chi, Qigong, and yoga to calm their nervous systems because it's really hard to hold up one arm, one leg, and breathe slowly while you're thinking about the calls that you ran. We are now in the police academies and the fire academies, teaching them how to meditate and get still and do breath work, reset their nervous systems. This is the drummer of Def Leppard holding the drum circle at our conference. We get all the first responders in the room. We get a bunch of those hand drums, and they all play together. And trust me, they have no rhythm, but it doesn't make any difference because we're just out there trying to change the world together and get some heart coherence. He and his wife, Lauren, who's an incredible musician and singer and meditator. Listen, I know nothing. When I got out of Kaiser, if they told me that we could set baby pandas on your belly and set them on fire and your belly would work again, I'd have done it. No offense to baby pandas, but I would have done anything to get my belly back. But the truth is, I wasn't supposed to have my belly back, because if I had my belly back, I wouldn't be here on Sunday morning teaching at a symposium about first responders. So sometimes the very things that you think are going to end your life are actually redirecting you to something else. So this is always how I close every presentation. Let's go change the world together. If you know somebody who wants to see that center built, or if you want to see that center built, come see me because we could use the help. In the meantime, I'm going to show you a very entertaining video that shows what we've done, and then I'll put up the donate button. We're probably not even allowed to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right. And then I'm going to let you ask questions. You ready? Here's the video. So here we are at the end of the presentation. And I know that you have questions for me, and I know there are people smarter than me in this room. I heard, I think Lynn warned me, maybe it was Julie who told me that smart people were going to ask smart questions, and I'm going to try to give you smart answers. I can tell you that when you walk into a room of the Violent Fugitive Apprehension Task Force officers, and I'm going to just tell you because it's a cool story. We went to Virginia, the US Marshals showed up in a blacked out bus, okay? And I can tell you there was like rock music playing in my head, like dun da da dun da da dun da da dun as they were pulling up. And they get out of this bus, and there are all these huge, tattooed, bearded, even the women, getting off the bus, coming in to learn about resiliency. And they sit in the room in the first day, and they're like this. What are you going to teach me, lady? And by day 2, they're standing up and they're crying and they're hugging us. And we're hearing from people that, I just heard it yesterday, you gave me my husband back. You gave me the father of my children back. You saved me from killing myself. I'm not a perfect person with all the perfect answers, but I'm going to tell you that not only has it been individuals who've helped us, but places like the Redwood Credit Union, Impact 100, these people have rallied behind us to help us change the world. And it takes a village to raise an idiot, and I'm your village idiot. So if you have any questions about our work, I think I'm done. That was my time, right? How'd I do on timing? Was that impressive?
Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Susan. Very inspirational. So I'll ask the first question.
Yeah.
Have you connected with any billionaires who want to fund the development?
You know, I haven't, but here's the thing I like to say, that I already have all the money we need to build the center. It just happens to be in your wallet. So if you know any billionaires, let us know. Yeah, you know, 6 degrees of separation. I don't know. We haven't yet, but we're hoping.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
No, right here.
You,
What's the difference between your first responder PTSD and military service PTSD and children who went through hell with their parents?
oh, that is such a great question. Nothing. The way they got the symptoms is different. So the children of the Auschwitz survivors, those children often have the sort of the makeup for having post-traumatic stress because it's genetically passed on. Veterans, first responders, children raised in trauma, all similar experiences, the nervous system is offline. And so it's a different exposure, a different way to get it, same thing. So why don't I train veterans? Because there are thousands of organizations across the US helping veterans. And I'm a housewife, divorced housewife from Roanoke Park, who the veterans were like, we're going to have our clinicians and our doctors do it. And I go, that's okay. I'm going to talk to the first responders who are listening to me. So great question. That was a great first question. Yes.
I'm just wondering how I don't want to say clients, but the first responders who come and participate in your program, are they voluntary? Are they chosen because somebody says you need to go?
Yes.
Is it mandatory?
Yes. So sometimes they volunteer to come. Some get paid by their departments, some do not. We try to get, like RCU and Impact 100 will donate money and we'll use it for scholarshiping people who can't afford to come. Some are voluntold to come, which is their department says, we really like you to go in there and try that out and see if that helps a little bit. Some come skeptical and leave as believers. Some come as believers and their lives are transformed. And oh yeah, we have a subset, about 2%, that show up angry, absolutely denying that it could be any, and say to themselves, it was a waste of my time. It's like, it's okay. It's okay. You weren't ready. Go ahead. Oh, wait. All right. All right. There's dueling microphones going on here, people. All right. Go ahead.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
Janice Carmen here, and
Hi.
I ran for city council a year ago for this district, and you're an amazing, unique, powerful speaker. I've been
Oh.
watching speakers since I was, I don't know, 50 years, 40 years, whatever. And I want to say that I share your background. I thought everybody had it in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And you're really a unique personal speaker, period, you
Thank
know,
you.
and it's not just a resilience building we're looking at. You are the building, you are the word, and you are the movement. And Nancy Pelosi is another example, and you should learn more about Nancy.
Okay.
She is fabulous.
Call Nancy
And-
for me. Tell her to call me.
Oh, she was mother of 5, and she never ran for anything. And even our city council, it was very difficult for me to run for city
Yeah.
council. And
Oh, what's your question? Yeah,
okay,
the,
okay,
the,
my-
the police
my-
are here. Go ahead.
okay, my question is that how can the average person, do you have a website or something?
We
How
do.
How can we get involved with this? Because I have no lack of feeling that you're not going to accomplish this. You are.
Yeah.
But you need to have all of us know about this because it's not just the law enforcement.
One
Thank you.
starfish at a time. And I'm going to tell you the story. You have a question.
I actually don't have a question. I just had a comment for you. My son is a retired police officer,
Oh, yeah. You gotta hold it like
and
this. for
my
everyone.
daughter was a 911
Dispatcher.
dispatcher. And my daughter did get PTSD
Yeah.
and was off work for over a year, just
Yeah.
trying to get through that. My son probably has, when I told him about this organization, and he said, I really wish they would have had that when I was there.
Oh, man, so do I.
So,
Yeah, thank you for that. Oh, back there, there.
Question?
Big hand back there.
Oh,
Big
yeah,
hand.
back in the backpack.
I'm gonna tell you the starfish story before I let you go home. Before they kick us out of the building.
Would your system also work for young girls who have been molested?
Absolutely. This is the human condition. It works for anybody who would listen. Trust me, I won't shut up and I won't sit down. If there's a place that will bring me in to let me teach about this, whether it's girls who've been sexually assaulted, whether it's veterans, whether it's physicians. We did a presentation to the emergency room physicians at Kaiser. One of the doctors came up crying and said, "Thank you. Oh my God, this is amazing. I hope they'll bring this in." I talked to the chief of the ER. You know what he said? "Yeah, we know all this." Ego versus ego, right? It's like, "Oh yeah, we know all this." Okay. Well, you're not doing it because you're losing doctors, but go ahead. Next question. Anybody else want to say something cute? Yes.
Can you talk more about the statistics of your success with these people who come in for help or just to talk, what have you?
Yeah.
And also, do people do this generally as a one-time course, or do they keep coming back for
Yeah.
more?
Right. So that's a great question. I'll tell you about statistics first. Second. First thing I'm going to tell you is, yeah, they usually come in one time and then they say, "How do I help?" And then they come as volunteers and then they get the education and training for free so that they keep coming back and helping. And people volunteer for us. We have civilians volunteering us, Rotary's trying to help us out. A lot of people, in the beginning, when you start a nonprofit and you're a housewife from Rohnert Park, California, people go like this: "Well, let's give her a little money and see if she can keep us going. Well, let's see if we can give her a little seed money." I get a lot of little seed money. We don't have big money coming in, but I won't shut up and I won't sit down. So here we go. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Statistics. I would say that for those who do the work, it's like joining a gym. If in January you decided you were going to start working out and you joined a gym, by now you've probably lost $100. All right. And it's the same with our work. If you do the work, your brain will be changed. You will be forever improved because of it. If you don't do the work that we teach you, you're just going to lose your money. So how do I equate that? I don't know. What we do with the longitudinal study at Loma Linda is they check them 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year afterwards. And we find those hosts who stick with it, they have lasting changes in their brains. Something I didn't have up there were the statistics around first responders, that we are 40% more likely to kill ourselves than to die in the line of duty. Our divorce rate is 25% higher than the national average. Our life expectancy is 10 to 15 years less than civilians. So I've got those statistics to work that information. Go ahead. Who has a question?
I had a question.
Go, doctor.
Yeah. Well, I
You have to ask a
also
question. You can't tell a story because
No.
the police will come.
I have an MPH. So looking at the statistics of what you're doing, how many people, what's the strength of the studies? How many people have gone through?
At this point, it's just around, if I'm not mistaken, Barbara somewhere is going to tell me it's like 14,000 first responders and their families. That's a good answer. Yeah, it's a good aim. It's a good start. And I want to tell the starfish story before we go to the next question, if that's okay. There's this little story about a grandpa and his little grandson walking along the beach after the tide has gone out. This is written on the first spiral bound binder I ever created when I started doing this work. I still have it. And I wrote on the front of that binder the starfish story, because there's a story about a grandpa and his grandson walking on the ocean at the beach when the tide has gone out and the sand is covered with starfish. And every few feet, the grandpa picks up a starfish and he throws it into the ocean. And finally, after a few minutes, the grandson becomes curious and says, "Papa, what are you doing? Why do you keep throwing the starfish?" And he goes, "Oh, honey," he said, "if they stay on the sand like this, they'll dry up and die." And the grandson looks over and he sees all the starfish on the beach and he says, "Grandpa, what difference does it make?" And the grandpa picks up the starfish, he throws it into the ocean. He says, "It makes a difference to this one." And that's how I keep my work going, one starfish at a time. I am here to change the world, and I will, but I'm going to do it one starfish at a time. Next question. Anybody?
What has the impact been on your children for you to start this?
Oh, I love your question. This is truth. I sat down with the two little boys, we call them, who are now 5'11" and 6'2". The youngest is the tallest, which I think is ironic. And I sat down with the two little boys because the three oldest, two had gone into college and one was in his end of high school years. And so the two younger ones were going to be the ones most impacted. I did ask them all for permission. And I asked the two in Roman, number 4, they got tattoos, by the way, after they were 18. The first one has a number 1 here. The second one has a number 2. They all have a little tattoo. And I got one that says surrender. So I was asking the children if it was okay if I sold their home. And my son, Roman, number 4, said, "What do you think God would have you do, Mom?" It's like not a question a kid would normally ask. And I said, "I think because I have all this information, I've been given this vision to do this, I think God would have me sell the house." And he said, "Do it, Mom. God will take care of the rest." I think my children have witnessed what it's like to watch a mom who is convinced that she can do something to change the world. It's inspired them. Because my daughter was a freshman at Berkeley when the Tubbs fire hit. And she asked her father, who was a firefighter, why are the firefighters using their pickup trucks with maps and cell phones to track this fire? Why don't you do it with a satellite? And he said, "Honey, we don't have that technology just yet." So my daughter went back to Berkeley her sophomore year, changed her major from cognitive science to tech, and she became the CEO of a tech startup that has now served 15 million people, helping them evacuate from disasters using technology like satellites. And 2 of my sons are in the film industry. And one of my sons, well, the 2 younger sons work for the 2 older sons. So if you're going to have a whole bunch of kids, set it up like that. I would say so far, I think they believe in me. They're all coming home to go to the humanitarian award. Yeah. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns? I'm going to be here for a little bit. So if you're going to stick around, I don't have to make the whole audience listen, but if you want to talk to me, our assistant Grayson is back there, the handsome man with a mustache. And then my lovely Danish, where's Fire Breath? That's Barbara. Barbara is at Donor Cultivation. So if you have questions about our nonprofit, what we do with the money, any of that, and you want to help us out, that's the person you want to talk to. If you speak Danish, sprechen Sie Deutsch. All right.
Thank you very much,
you.
Susan
Thank you all.
Farren.
Thank you, everybody.
Outstanding talk. Outstanding work.